You're listening to Marriage Minute with Pastors Richard and Donna Spears, impacting marriages that leave a lasting legacy. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the last week of April.
How's everybody doing at the end of this month? Yeah, I know. I wish we could have a little bit of interaction, but I guess we get that on the live stream.
Right. Yeah. So we are, like we said, in the last week of April, going into May. We're super excited about bringing the love language number 4 to you today for our podcast. Podcast 17. Can you believe we've been doing it?
It's hard to believe.
What is that, 17 weeks then, right?
Yeah, that would be 17 weeks.
Would that be the beginning of the year?
Yeah, that's what we did. We decided that we were going to kick off our podcast at the beginning of the year. So.
And then our live broadcast started in October of 2021 then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I was thinking about that the other day, like how God has been just so good to fill our hearts and our minds and our spirit with all that is of Him, and has just been blessing the Revival Now ministry on top of the Marriage Minute ministry that we have together. You know, the Lord spoke to people who prophesied to us that we would have a ministry together. We just didn't know what that would be. And so we are here on podcasts every week, every Tuesday with new exclusive content, and on live broadcasts every week, just bringing you practical advice, bringing the Word of God into your marriage to impact your marriage for eternity.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so important to, we just wanted this to be practical. Everything that we do, we just wanted to be practical. And how do you actually apply this to your life? And how does the Bible actually, provide insights, if you will, into these practical applications that we're talking about. And so one of the things that we talked about last week was physical touch. And I mentioned last week that it was important for us to realize that these love languages aren't not the end all.
Right.
They're just tools that you put in your toolbox, right? But it's a way for you to better love your spouse. One of the things that we keep talking about, with our Marriage Minute live streams and our podcast is that we want to love each other well and love each other better. And this is just one of the practical applications of doing that, is learning the love language of your partner, of your spouse, and communicating, which is a very important thing you've been emphasizing. And then working to implement these tools, these strategies.
Yes. How do you apply it to your
marriage?
How
do you apply that out?
Work it out.
And then get feedback. We were talking about that yet this morning. Like, okay, well, I do this for you. Is this really, Donna's thing isn't the thing we're going to talk about today. Acts of service, which is really one of my top two. But I've been recently getting her coffee ready in the morning. All she has to do is just push the button, because we don't have like a Keurig, but we have like one of those single serve type things.
Yeah.
But anyway, I've got it ready for her in the morning, and I'm like, okay, that's an act of service. But do you really like it? She goes, actually, I do kind of like that, but
it doesn't fill my tank in a way that words of affirmation would.
But I think maybe what it does is I'm thinking of you. Which is important. You want to know that I'm thinking about you, and I'm caring for you. So even though it's not like filling your tank, so to speak, you do appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. And we have to understand that just because your spouse's love language is a certain love language and they don't get their tank filled per se, let's just say, my tank is not filled when you do something for me. That doesn't mean that I don't appreciate it, that I'm not thankful or grateful for it, and that it doesn't, cause me to just be, happy inside. But it doesn't have that long-lasting, speaks to the heart and the spirit when you say, you did a really great job with that presentation, or the research that you did on that to bring to the table, man, that was just awesome. That kind of stuff, literally I can feel my posture just lifting and my head lifting. So
you're really encouraged by that.
I am. I'm encouraged. I'm excited. I love how, you in that way you're noticing what I'm doing. You are giving me appreciation for it. And so that fills my tank in ways that maybe acts of service can't. It's
Right.
still nice
Right.
and it's still great and I'm still appreciative. But don't get things confused where if your spouse is thankful that you did something for them or you bought something for them, and that's not their primary love language, just know that it's not having the impact. It's still a positive, it's still a bonus for the relationship, but it's not doing if you're speaking to them in their love language is truly doing. And it's so cool how like understanding love languages of your spouse and of yourself, how God just kind of ordained that in people and just made us the way that we are, how that just all kind of works out.
It is.
It's kind of cool.
So my one of my top 2 love languages is acts of service. It's like acts of service, physical touch. Those are like my top 2. We talked about the physical touch last week, so it's all about me, I guess. These last couple weeks.
When is it
We
not?
covered
No, I'm
you
kidding.
like right out of the gate. Like words of affirmation
Right,
was like
right.
you right out of the gate.
Absolutely.
But anyway, so even though one of my top ones to fill my tank is acts of service, that doesn't necessarily mean it's yours. So even though I think it's great, I love acts of service. It fills my tank. I get excited on the inside. I get like, wow, my wife's really thinking about me. And, not that I don't care to like make my lunch or do things like that.
It just means something.
It just
to
means
you.
something to me.
Absolutely.
And so even though it means something to me in a special way, just because I like it doesn't mean I should just automatically say, oh, well, Donna would probably like that too.
Yep.
So
something to watch out for, and I think we mentioned that.
Yeah, that's why I asked you, like, when I prep your coffee and get things ready for you more, does that really do much for you? Well, not really filling her tank.
Right.
But it does show some appreciation to her, and I'm thinking of her and that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
But for those of you out there that, maybe your spouse, their love language is acts of service. Maybe you haven't been, like good at doing that. The good news is, and encouraging you here is that you can actually learn the skill.
Absolutely.
So
you
don't
can learn
feel like
you can learn anything.
You can learn anything.
With
You
God,
put your
all
mind
things
to
are
it,
possible.
There's intentionality. You can learn anything.
Absolutely.
So the good news is that you can learn the skill. So don't be discouraged that, oh God, and don't be overwhelmed. Like there's a saying that we've used, at least in our generation, that, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? So, even though it looks big and it looks kind of daunting, just take steps.
Yeah.
If you just take steps toward that goal of meeting your spouse's needs in that way, you're going to get there. Just don't feel like you have to run a race. I mean, this is not a sprint,
Oh, no.
right? You're not going to get it all together in 1 week.
Discipline, like learning a new skill,
And
any
you
kind
want
of
to be,
skill.
and you want to be disciplined at it.
Yeah.
I think, what is it, like 21 days to create a new habit, or get that habit formed in you. That
I think I'm a slow learner because it never worked in 21 days.
It never worked for you. So anyway, don't do what Donna does relative to habits. But if you do, if you are persistent and you persevere in this, it will become like second nature to you, and you'll be able to meet your spouse's needs in a great way.
So I think, honestly, looking back, I think my dad's love language was acts of service because that's what he did for us girls and for Mom. So he would always have the car. I never had to wash my car, never had to sweep it out, never had to put gas in it, never had to learn how to change tires, nothing. It was all done for me, every bit of it.
Yeah.
And so I think, whereas he, I think that's how he showed me love. And I didn't understand it at the time, that's what Dad did, right? But that is an example of an act of service or acts of service. Or like my mom, she made sure there was food on the table. She made sure we had our special treats that were, in the fridge or in the cupboard, or what cereal we want. That was her way of showing love. Similar to your mom, she will cook for you, in a heartbeat. That's how she shows people that she loves them.
Right.
And so it's not all about cars and food.
Right.
But just from my experience and your experience, I think in the generation that our parents grew up, that's what they had. Yeah. And that's what they utilized to show their families that they loved them.
Yeah, I mean, you're speaking about, like, generationally, like with your father and what I believe my mother is acts of service is huge for her.
Absolutely.
She loves having things done for her. If you're doing something for her, even though you may be sacrificing time, my mom lives about an hour and 15, hour and a half from me. And so to go down there to do something, not that it's difficult or whatever, but it does take some sacrifice and some effort to do that. But it means so much to her.
Yeah.
When I can do something simple, like I put, like even over Easter weekend, she said, hey, I need to get my cover off of my air conditioning unit because it's going to be warming up and I want to have it ready. And I said, well, I'll just go out and do it right now. And it didn't take me like 5 minutes to do that, right? But my mom's 90 years old, so... it's hard for her to get around, even though she's still very active and she does great for her age, lives on her own. I just went out there in the moment and took care of it.
Absolutely.
And I came back in, she goes, oh, I just really appreciate you. So it's huge for her. Acts of service was huge for her. And I think the same goes for our oldest daughter, Taylor. Acts of service are huge for her too. So like generationally, you can kind of see, I don't know that there was a pattern there, or that's just how God wired each one of us uniquely to be filled that way. But it's cool to kind of think about, like I see it in my mother, I see it in myself, and I see it in our oldest daughter, how acts of service matter in those 3 generations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So really what we're talking about is acts of service is really what it means. It sounds like it means doing something for your spouse that they would like.
Yeah.
So in doing these acts of service for your spouse, to them, they know, and this I think is where it speaks volume to them, they know that you're giving up your time just for them. Like they know it's a sacrifice for you to do what they're doing. They know it's that this thing that you're doing, it might be exhausting for you. It's very time consuming that you do it, but that to them, knowing that you're willing to give up time for them is what fills their tank.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's like 4 things that you can do if you're really trying to develop this tool, if you will, to support your spouse better. There's 4 things. You want to pay attention to small things. Like what your partner likes to do when you take vacations. Like what are those small little things? Like they like to go to certain restaurants, or, what are those kinds of things? How they prepare their coffee. What are all those things? Like how much sugar do they put in it? How much cream do they put in it? How do they like it? Those things are very, very important. Are there things that your partner doesn't enjoy doing? If so, if you know what that is, like taking out the trash, like I love doing that. Not really, but I do it anyway. Cleaning the floors. Like my wife, not that again her love language is acts of service, but she does like it when I Swiffer the floor. We have wood floors in our home, and so she likes that kind of thing. So what are those little things that you can pick up on that really matter? Right.
Know what their favorite show is and when it's on, and sit and watch it with them.
Yeah.
You might think that's also quality time, but to that person where acts of service is their primary love language, it's an act of service. The quality time doesn't necessarily fill their bucket. So it's an act of service to do that.
Yeah, focus on things that are easy to do to fit into your schedule as well, that actually meet theirs.
Absolutely.
So that's a huge thing. If you know what your spouse's calendar looks like throughout the week, maybe you can kind of weave in those things that can be fit into your schedule. So again, don't try to make it daunting. Take steps at a time. Grow it, develop it, utilize your strengths. I mean, that's another thing you got to consider is, if you understand your partner and something they don't like to do, then just offer your services to help them do that.
Absolutely.
It may be your very strength. I mean, this isn't maybe the best example, but I know you used to do the finances in our house, right?
Right.
And this is something that, I'm actually more geared toward, but I was just being lazy or whatever. In doing it, and really wasn't stepping into the role that God designed me to do for our family and our home. But if you were a person that loved acts of service and you were doing that and you just hated it, right? And it's a strength of mine. I step in and I start doing this and taking it over because I know it's something you don't like to do. You've done it because you've had time. You were a stay-at-home mom at one point in our relationship, and now it's like the time is there and it's available, and I'm actually good at it. I'm kind of gifted that way, so
That's right.
I step in and take that off your plate.
Yeah.
So those are things that, I guess 4 different things you can think about when you're trying to move into this new tool that you're trying to develop, this new skill to help your spouse and make them feel loved.
So how can we really help our spouse? If my love language is acts of service, how can I help you understand that that's what my primary love language is?
Well, I mean, I think it's with all of these love languages, right? I have to tell you.
Exactly. Communication.
I think it's something that it's foundational in any relationship is we have to talk about it.
Yeah.
Like, okay, what are the things that either I don't like to do that I wish somebody would do for me? What are things that, you would just think of me that would just be like, wow, I can't believe you would do that for me. I mean,
So really, when you start implementing this and you start understanding how the love languages work, by telling you, giving the feedback, positive and negative. Hey, this really filled my tank, and this kind of missed the mark. And do it in a constructive way. You guys are in a learning process. We had to walk through this journey together when we were on this path and learning about love languages and what really makes me feel loved and appreciated in him as well. And so just don't assume that you know everything about your spouse and that they know everything about you and what they like and what they don't like. You need to communicate and need to talk about it.
Absolutely. I think it's just this whole, it's the intentionality. Again, it comes back to that. And being sincere about what you're doing, and not being, with a bad attitude doing.
Right.
If you come into it with a bad attitude and you're doing it, I mean, your spouse is going to kind of sniff that out. So, and it's not going to mean as much. But if you come with the right motive and the right heart attitude about it, that you really want to serve your spouse in this way to show them that you love them, that's gonna shine through always.
Absolutely. And really, just a little side note here, acts of service, even any of the love languages, it's not about filling your spouse's emotional needs. Those are something totally different. This is about filling that tank, making them feel loved. It's not about their emotional health, their spiritual health. It ties in. It all ties in. But don't replace a love language for all the other positives that we've talked about in working on your marriage and working on yourself as a spouse as well. Right.
So I feel bad for Don at times because mine being acts of service, it does require a lot of effort. Like last week when we talked about physical touch. It doesn't. There's some benefits to physical touch. It doesn't take it takes some intentionality for sure, but it doesn't take a lot of extra effort. But
yes, but if you are me, and the non-intimate touches, yes, not a whole ton of effort. But if it's going to become more than that, then we go back to that whole. Being together intimately is more in the head for the ladies, so you have to prepare for that.
No doubt.
Yeah.
But I guess generally speaking about physical touch, if it's non-intimate, it's just physical touches, holding hands, kissing, sitting next to each other on the couch, watching a movie, whatever. That doesn't take as much effort, right?
Right.
Once you kind of get to know what that is, the effort isn't there. But like with acts of service, for the people that have to try to meet the needs of those like myself, acts of service, it's a little more effort. It's a little more demanding.
It's a lot.
And so it's demand of your time.
Yep.
And so it is, not to say that all of them aren't a sacrifice, because they are. But when you think about acts of service, they do take time. They do take preparation. Like if you're trying to figure out what you're going to do on vacation, your spouse really appreciates you planning a vacation, thinking about the small things. Developing those, spontaneous moments within that. But there's a lot of effort and activity that goes into all of that.
There is. So our advice to you would be just, hang in there. Stay the course. You'll find the groove of your spouse. And it gets to be not so daunting and not so time consuming because you kind of learn the rhythm, you kind of learn how to implement that in a way that really speaks to your spouse.
Right. Just, be patient, have grace toward one another, like Donna said before. When you're learning these new things you're trying to implement, if you're the person who receives acts of service and that fills your tank, have grace toward your partner that they're learning, they're growing, they're trying to really do a better job in that area.
Absolutely.
With you, and vice versa. Be patient with the spouse who needs acts of service to fill their tank. You might see it as like really being over demanding or whatever, but just have patience with them too, because eventually as you communicate, you talk, you do things, you're gonna become better aware of what those things are that are filling your spouse's tank. And so just have patience on both sides and have grace toward one another that
absolutely.
You're in a process of developing and working this out.
We know life can get in the way, so talk about that. Talk about the fact that you weren't able to do this or to do that, but that your heart was to do it. Maybe you had to work late. Maybe you have to go out of town on a business trip. Maybe the kids are sick, somebody's in the hospital. And just let your spouse know, if their primary love language is acts of service, that those things are on your mind. You haven't forgot about them and you haven't forgot about them. So just communicate that to your spouse. And that goes a long way, In if you're not able to fill my tank in the way that you normally do, and that has stopped for a time, just you saying, hey, I get it. My mind has been focused on this. I'm so sorry. Man, that's just huge. I mean, forgiveness, grace, you got it, because you're actually humbling yourself and not taking on well, doesn't she know that my life is important and I've got all this stuff to do? Yeah, we know that, but nothing's more important than God in your life and then working on your marriage. And so, you just got to set your priorities, right?
That's for sure. I'm thinking about, I think something that we talked about a couple weeks ago in our live stream broadcast, and we were talking about love, or I think we're just doing a recap. We've been doing a recap of some of the messages you shared.
Yep.
About love and respect. And I'm thinking of the scripture in Ephesians chapter 5, starts in verse 25, goes down to 33. Within that text, if you want to just, at your leisure, look that up, read through that. I'm paraphrasing here. So what the Apostle Paul was saying there was that, husbands are supposed to love their wives like their own bodies.
Yes.
And so you want to cherish, you want to nourish, you want to care for. So when you think about all of the love languages, but we're talking about acts of service today. This is husbands toward wives when it speaks about love, but also I know we're talking about love being reciprocated here. But when you think about that scripture, when you're caring for your spouse in that way, right? You're actually doing what the Bible is telling you to do, which is to love love your spouse as your own body. You're cherishing, you're nourishing, you're caring for.
Because I think it even says, who would neglect their own body?
Who would neglect their own body, right? So the Bible says, the two become one, right? So now I can't just forget about you and your needs and how you want to be loved, right?
Right.
As one set of tools, if you will. I want to care for you just like I would care for my own body.
Absolutely.
And so what we're speaking about here is very biblical, and we may not speak the same love language, but when we do speak a love language that meets the needs of our spouse, it's very lasting, and it helps to fulfill our relationship. You just have to communicate. I know we've been saying that repeatedly, but you just have to communicate with your partner. Keep the dialogue open. Continue to move and to grow in these skills that meet your spouse's need, and have grace with one another. That's the key.
So speaking of communication, if you have any questions regarding the material that we bring forth in our podcast or even on our live broadcasts on Wednesdays at 11 a.m., please let us know. You can email us at marriageminute@revivalnow.com. We're always available and ready to connect with you, to answer questions, to just to talk with you.
Yeah, Absolutely. We love that. Hey, you can watch us. You can connect with us a number of ways. I mean, from the website, revivalnow.com /watch live. You can watch us live on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. New York time. That's an easy way to connect with us. You can also, from our website, go down to the Marriage Minute podcast under media, and then you can connect directly to our podcast. You can listen to us on a number of different platforms, from Anchor to Spotify to Google to Apple. We're on all of those different outlets. You can watch us live from our website at revivalnow.com. You can watch us live from Facebook and YouTube at Revival Now Dan Steep. And you can watch us on demand and live from our app. We have a Revival Now app that you can download from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. And you can watch us live and on demand there as well. And also connect with us through our podcast platform as well. So you can connect with us a number of different ways. And so it's pretty easy. It's pretty convenient. You can get, our app is really like the hub of the ministry if you think about it. It gets you to every aspect of our ministry quickly, easily, in the palm of your hand. So you ought to download that and use that. It's really awesome.
Yeah, and you can always catch us live at 11 a.m. on Wednesdays. But hey, help us get the word out. Like and share our content. Just share it with your family and your friends in your Facebook and Instagram groups, Twitter, whatever you do. And we would really appreciate that. So that's it for today. Join us next week as we talk about love language number 5. It's the last love language, according to Dr. Gary Chapman, receiving gifts.
Sounds great.
All
See
right.
you guys.
See you next week.
Thank you for listening today. Catch all of our podcasts at revivalnow.com. And send us your Marriage Minute questions at marriageminute@revivalnow.com.